Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Rabbit Trail Podcast. This is the podcast where we're going to chase the truth wherever it runs. This is episode number 162.
162. Pipe down there for a minute, mister.
We're excited that you guys would be joining with us. My name is Greg Harris. I'm the senior pastor at the church that sponsors the podcast called Olive Branch Community Church. We're glad that you're joining us. If you are new, let us know. We would love to connect with you in some way. But this is indeed a podcast where what we try to do is we jump off of the sermon, the topic brought up on Sunday, and we try to ask questions, pick up things that we threw on the cutting room floor, all kinds of different directions, and answer questions and respond to interesting comments. And it's just a kind of a free roaming, exciting, kind of interesting thing. We hope it captures your attention and that you join with us in this conversation. My fellow co-hosts are here. Why don't you guys say hi?
Hi.
Thank you. And no, who are you guys?
Hello, my name is Stephen Oldham. I'm the local outreach pastor here at Olive Branch. And we want to thank you for watching on YouTube if you're watching along. If you're walking along and you're listening to us on Apple, give us a subscribe. Make sure you star that. I think it stars there. But if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit the like and subscribe and share with others because that's one of the best ways to get out the word.
All right. And I'm Brent Branchot. I'm the Connections Pastor here at Olive Branch Church. And we would love to hear, read, and discuss your questions and your feedback for the show. And you can send us your questions, and it doesn't have to pertain to the message that we're talking about. It can be any kind of life question, any kind of theological question, and we would be happy to discuss that. And you can send those questions to us at email them to us at rabbittrail@obcc.church, rabbittrail@obcc.church.
Okay, so I have a question. Mm-hmm. You know, we are so formulaic at our beginning now. Mm-hmm. Should we just change it up? Like, are we? I'm ADD, so I get bored with like the same thing over and over and over again. But I don't know. Your thoughts?
Isn't consistency good for ADHD people?
Is a consistency, yeah. But
I am all about tradition, and that's why I know that you hate when I repeat the number and even say "and" in it just to make it wrong.
I hate that.
No, he hates
you
that.
Hate
I
that.
just hate the
and
interruption.
I know that you hate it because you always try to cut me off.
I'm just trying to.
I just want to reassure you. I am about tradition, and I don't care about the integrity of the show. I will ruin that just to get that in there. So as hard as you try to get past that, I will always bring it back.
I'm just imagining everybody can easily go, I can skip the first 35 seconds.
4 minutes, right?
It's 4 minutes.
After 4 minutes.
After 4 minutes,
just turn it off.
It's really bad. So
and I don't care.
Humor only lasts 4 minute segments, and that's it.
So while we're in that 4 minute segment, and if anybody has any opinions about that, we'd love to know.
We'll get them.
I'm sure.
Yes. We have not had an email for quite some time, so
maybe
we
won't
love
know.
to get your emails and give us some feedback on what Greg's talking about right now.
Yeah.
Well.
I mean, and we'd love to like just connect with you guys. We love our audience.
Did you say disconnect with you?
We would love to connect, not disconnect. Because we love our audience. We want to get to know them better. So anyway, we're glad that you guys are around, and we love running into you in the hallways and out there. And so, Brent, where are we going? What's going on? What's on tap?
I don't know, but if we do want to change up the front of the thing, number one, we'll have to be more intentional and not just come in here all loosey goosey and just rabbit trail this whole thing. We'll have to actually have some structure and some discipline, which I know I lack in my life. So, so I don't know how well that's going to go, but I will always follow wherever you guys lead. So boom, chakalaka. So quick joke for the day is, why are chickens so funny? Because oh boy, I just heard that one too.
Out of the kindergartens again.
There you go. You gotta do what you got to do.
Getting jokes from the kindergarten here at the school.
All right, and then Stephen for his first impressions.
Oh wow, that was really the joke. Okay,
that was really the joke.
We don't ask for much around here, folks. We don't.
All right. Wow, this is going to be interesting.
What's going to be interesting?
So, do you want to tackle the Euthyphro dilemma first, or do you want to talk about Easter? Because boy, some of the shorts about Easter have stirred up some people's concern.
Got their Easters in a wad.
Yeah, we the truth behind Easter, myth versus reality, is one of the shorts that's out there, part of our long podcast. So if you're watching at home and you're seeing the short,
Yeah,
make
I
sure
have to
you
give
watch the
I have to give a
podcast.
correction on that one
Yeah.
actually, because that's important. And it's not the correct. The correction is not that Easter comes from Ishtar. It doesn't come from Ishtar. I'm just going to remind that the etymological background doesn't connect. Those are different.
So we've got about three
Places.
or four comments concerning Easter.
Yeah,
So,
one of the guys got it right. Go to that guy.
so the Ostari.
Yes, that's the correct one. I mean, to an extent.
Let's see. There's so many. Oh, hold on. Great. Oh, there it is. All right, here we go. This is J9 Lorna. Easter comes from the term osteri and from paganism. Don't you think it's odd that life returns in abundance to the North Hemisphere during this time? Bunny populations explode and the Earth starts to produce food again after the freezing winter. Also, where the word osterigen comes from, Christianity just stole and rebranded the pagan celebration. I mean, where the TF did the Christmas tree come from in Christianity? It didn't. It came from paganism. So that was their comment on.
Yeah, so the ostiary part is correct. And in fact, from what I did a little bit more research because I know it wasn't from Ishtar. And I'll just kind of read a little bit of stuff that I was able to pull up. First of all, Resurrection Sunday has been celebrated it's very ancient. It's really, really old.
It was since I was a kid.
The name Easter, yeah, that's really old. I mean, when you were a kid, whoa. But the name Easter as a word, as a name for the thing is a very different.
For the holiday, you mean?
Yeah, for the holiday. That from what I read, and again, I've been wrong before and could be wrong this time. I did read that there is no connection to let me just pull it up here to Ishtar at all. So the word actually connects according to all kinds of different groups that deal with this stuff. It comes from Bede. Now, the Venerable Bede was a ecclesiastical historian in the middle, and he was a Middle English writer. So he's one of the few people that we get this kind of link between ancient English, Anglo-Saxon life, Saxon life. Bede is the one who kind of gives us that information, and he is the one who would use the word that word east and stuff and connection. And so like here's a bunch of cognates in the German and other Indo-European languages. So the West Frisian is east, Dutch is Oost, Ost is German, Ost, Oost. All these are different terms that are in Latin we get aurora, which means the rising dawn, or the Eos is the Greek version. So there's all these different semantics in the background. And what's interesting is the Proto-European root underlies the name, which she said, the dawn goddess Eostre. And it was an ancient Germanic concept. And again, we're talking about this idea of worship of a sunrise. Now, it gets associated to Easter because, well, some argue, they just took that Germanic celebration and we just took it up. Actually, probably a lot of the weird things that we pick up, like the Easter bunny and the bunnies stuff, they were probably symbols in that time. Don't have any doubt about that. But they were repurposed, as I talked about, the idea of things coming up out of the holes, they were able to repurpose these things as a way of teaching children about the resurrection of Jesus and the resurrection of the dead. And so, but the Old English term Oester was held onto by Bede. He's the one who kind of pulls it, and it means roughly April time. And so, okay, the question of, hey, isn't it weird that all of the things come to life in the North? No, it's not. Actually, all cycles in the ancient world, all mythological cycles, were based around Thank you. All right. All the mythological cycles. Do you know what a mythological cycle is?
No.
Okay. So a mythological cycle is like the events that circle around. You got like Osiris. He always dies and then comes back in the spring, right? Same thing with different Baal. The Baal cycle has a similar thing. And they're all connected to summer, when, summer, fall, winter, spring. And so there's this cycle of life that they would interpret in the Northern Hemisphere that it works like this. And so it's interesting that, Jesus rose in the springtime during Easter. And C.S. Lewis and these people who studied these ancient concepts, they didn't see that as odd. They actually saw that as, well, this is the true myth. All of these other things were created by God. If God had the ability to create a universe that was speaking about his world, about what he was going to do in his story, wouldn't he have the ability then to put in general revelation a hint to what he's going to do ultimately? And I do think there's an argument there for apologetics that the cycles that we see in the spring, in the
summer, winter, spring, fall,
and
the equinox,
in all of that speaks to this idea of there is God, Jesus is going to resurrect. People were looking for it.
Like a death and resurrection. The winter things die.
Yeah, one of the big people that I would point to in this argument is J. Warner Wallace. Jim Wallace does a great job in his series that he calls Person of Interest of revealing how all of these mythologies intersected at roughly the same moment when Jesus was around. And so one of the reasons Christianity flowed so easily into all of these different cultures was they were looking for someone like this. And this was a true historical event, not a mythological event. And that's a very different thing. When you have a mythological event, that's truth, but suddenly truth is broken into history. And that's where people started getting into this is huge. And so when the Germans discovered Jesus, what they do is they go the worship of this dawn goddess isn't right, but we don't have to give up all this stuff because it actually has its reality in the resurrection of Jesus. So they didn't kick aside the fertility bunnies and stuff like that. They rather repurposed all these things. Now, whether you feel like you should repurpose something like that or not is a matter of conscience. But I don't think, by the way, none of this separates you from God. I just want to make that clear. Like anybody out there who's making these comments, like it's like you're going to lose your life or your salvation because you worshiped on Christmas or Easter, or I use the word Easter or I use the word Christmas, or I just want to press pause and remind you, we are saved by grace in Jesus Christ, that he has borne our sins upon the cross. He truly rose from the dead in history, and that we don't have to freak out about all this kinds of stuff like we're engaged in a pagan ritual. I would just go to Paul. If that's your case and you really think it's a pagan ritual and you are uncomfortable and you're weak in the faith, don't do it. But you're going to be in you're going to be in a rare group. So
just to recap, so you're saying
Waester is the one that's linked
by name only, but not by tradition. The tradition goes much farther back, right?
There's
the tradition of the resurrection.
The actual celebration of resurrection
Pesha,
was occurring. Yeah, it was part of the church's celebration annually, far before Bede wrote and used that term to
so this
give
holiday
it the English
existed,
name.
So the holiday existed before it got named something.
Yes,
and we're basically doing the same thing. And then any kind of symbols. Many cultures use their own cultural examples for symbols of holidays. So you have some cultures going around reenacting the three wise men during certain holidays. You have other cultures that will bake little baby Jesus into bread, and if you find that one, you've seen the baby Jesus on Christmas. So these are like things. Oh man, you can probably link all of these to old pagan beliefs, but that's not why they're using them. We're talking about missiology, I think, a little bit. And in the missiology world, there's a difference between syncretization and symbol and using someone's culture to redeem it in order to glorify God. Now it's like music.
Right? I also want to clarify, like the other little bits of research and stuff I pulled up, is that the word Ishtar. We know Ishtar is the star goddess of the morning star of it's an Akkadian, Mesopotamian fertility and war goddess. Not a question. Actually, is the same god as Ephesus. We would call the Artemis.
Artemis.
So Artemis is equivalent. The word Ishtar, however, comes from its roots in language actually derive from the Semitic world, not the Indo-European. And so these are two different branches of language. Mm-hmm. They don't relate. We didn't take the term Ishtar and turn it into Easter. In fact, the person who made this popular was a guy named Alexander Hislop in a popular book called The Two Babylons. And he's the one who made the claim because of their phonetic similarity. This was in the 1800s. Mm-hmm. This is how old this This is a folk etymology. It's been disproven by entomologists over and over and over and over and over. So again, it was kind of popularized in the 1970s in some of these films, and the internet continues to let zombies live. But it's superficial. It actually has no connection to Ishtar. It does have a word connection to Oyster, and there was a festival of some kind, but
it wasn't widely spread.
But the celebration of the resurrection was happening far before we ever used the word Easter for it. So whether you want to use that word Easter or not, it's the English term.
Some people use Resurrection Day.
Wasn't Ishtar popularized by Barbara Streisand in the movie in the 70s or 80s?
I think we've said that a few times before in the past. Like go to episodes number 7, 8, or 9.
All right.
So all that to be said, that's some of the background on the words.
Right. Did you have another one? Or
There's the same kind of thing. I think you've covered it, but I'll just read it. It's not a faulty etymology, and I really loathe when people make claims like this and do not reference their sources. Ishtar comes from the ancient Babylonian goddess mother of Nimrod and Tamazu. Ishtar and Easter are related because they are both spring festivals, and they both symbolize fertility and sexual immorality. The Easter bunny was later developed due to popularity of Playboy magazine being associated with sex and sexuality. Also a great way for sharing crops in corporate America to sell eggs and chocolate. I was like, wow, that's a lot to go off of. But I would just say,
I had never connected the Easter bunny with the Playboy bunny.
I think that's why they picked the symbol.
I don't think I ever in my life
it's a
ever
fertility symbol.
Ever thought that
Maybe I think Cadbury's behind all of it.
I think it's weird though when someone says you need to you have to claim your sources when they're not sourcing things here in this list. You're not putting sources in the list. So symbol of the peace. If you're really upset at people not citing their sources, then you probably also need to cite your sources. Yeah, either that, and you want to move on to philosophy. Or save it for next week.
Oh, we're going to do the philosophy one. That's fine.
All right. Now, we did a video called The Euthyphro Dilemma.
That's where I was going when I asked you if you had another one.
Not the one. Is God bound by morality? So this was about you talking about the Euthyphro argument. Do you want to set up what that was?
Yeah. So the Euthyphro argument is one of the dialogues of Plato's dialogues of Socrates. And he's talking to a guy, and it basically comes down to this ultimate question of, does the good is the good declared by the gods as good, or is there a good beyond the gods that they must obey, and therefore that's the real good? So where does the definition of good really? And so it's set up in the horns of a dilemma, as they call it. You get skewered by one or the other. If there is a God, is that God bending to the good, which would make it more powerful than God?
And he wouldn't be the all-powerful.
And then the second question is, if God is over the good and is just declaring what is good or not, could he not declare evil things good and good things evil? Like rape could now be good because God says so. And so it's really...
there are some religions that's what their God is like.
Yeah, there are. And what my argument and the classic Christian argument is, there is a third option, which is that God is the good. His moral attributes define what the good is. And so that's where this guy says.
That's just where this guy is saying. He says, your third option still doesn't escape the original dilemma. You're still faced with the same problem. A, is something good because it's God's nature? Or B, is it good because it conforms to something else, something that exists outside of God's nature? This third option also risks making moral claims tautological. If you say God is good and goodness is defined as God's nature, then the statement God is good becomes the equivalent to God is God, a trivial tautology, not a meaningful moral claim.
So for everybody who says, what's that in the world? Is that tautology? Yeah. Okay, put on your thinking caps, folk. It's time for Philosophy with Greg.
It's apologetics question.
It's a new segment.
So, no, it's a tautological statement is a statement of identity. It means that you said the same thing. So a bachelor is an unmarried man. It's a pointless, it's good for a dictionary, but it's not moving you anywhere in a logical argument. In fact, it's a little mini circle, right? It's just, you are saying the same thing. You didn't say anything. It's love is love. What does meaningless. It's a meaningless statement if you don't give further definition to your concepts. And so in this case, where I believe he went wrong in his argumentation, read it again. He will say, if the good equals God's nature, right?
Yeah, it says if you say God is good and goodness is defined as God's nature, then the statement God is good becomes equivalent to God is God.
So clarification, we would say that God's nature is greater than just his moral attributes, that the good that we would say is good on earth. So we want to remind
Objectively
ourselves,
so.
there's an objective grounding to the good we proclaim as good because it aligns with the character, the good character of God. That is not to say that the good I'm doing is God. No, it's to say the good I'm doing aligns with the way that God would do something because that is his character. Character is innate within.
him.
It's innate within him. It is grounded.
Yeah.
It's the grounding problem. And the issue, they want to ground it in some other thing.
If you can distance God from his goodness, then you have a problem there because then, like you said, anything God says, he can change his mind. And so then goodness is no longer objectively so. It's just subjective to whatever God wants it to be.
Right. And otherwise, if it's outside of God and he had some rule that he conforms to, then it's bigger than God and it is God.
Yeah.
And so it's the same. It's the grounding problem is that really we're saying that God is of such a nature that his character is unchanging and his character is loving of the things that he describes as himself in the scriptures. Those that conform to that character, the actions we take, that is good.
Yeah.
And so those are not tautological. That is grounding from morals. And it's one of the most powerful arguments for the existence of God. One of the reasons that is taken up as a tautology is it's an attempt to eliminate the moral argument for the existence of God.
Yeah.
And so the moral argument of the existence of God is just, so I don't mess it up.
Are these cosmological arguments or something different?
No, it's if God does
moral
not exist, then objective moral values do not exist. But objective moral values do exist, therefore God exists.
Okay.
This is the moral argument. And so it's that's saying that there is an absolute evil, there's absolute good. You can't have. Now I would argue there's absolute good. I don't know if there's absolute evil because I believe that good exists and evil is the derivation or the brokenness from the good. So the twisting of the good. So, but the argument is basically that objective moral values can only be grounded in God. Otherwise, you have no moral values. Now, Platonists, which is somebody who would, just so everybody is understanding again, philosophy with Greg. Plato said there are these things called the forms. And what they were trying to do is say that there are these, like, hey, look, you've got a table that has 4 legs, and then you look over in the other room, there's another table, but it's taller and a different wood top, but it's still a table. And then you have all these tables all around. Well, what is the ultimate table when everyone thinks of the word table?
The concept of it in their head.
And so that is an objective concept of the table that exists somewhere. Now,
The perfect version.
and that would be the form called table that's stored somewhere as a real thing in the universe or outside of the universe. And so the problem with this is it gets into some really esoteric philosophy about whether this is realism or nominalism, and the idea of a form of a table would be, I consider that nominal, not real. But I do think numbers, some would argue numbers are nominal and real. So it gets into all these weird little things that you forgot about when you took a philosophy class in college. So, but that's what a form is. And so the problem with the forms is that you start asking questions like, well, what's the form of a form? And
yeah, it becomes an infinite regress.
it gets really odd, but it's really in vogue right now.
Really?
Yeah, it is. Platonism, having forms is a really, so Augustine's coming back. I'll guarantee it, because he was a Platonist. So he was a Christian Platonist. So.
All
All
right.
right, that's pretty much it for now.
Now that we put everybody to sleep,
All right.
What's that
Everybody
for you?
take a couple of deep breaths.
I can
and
tell
let's
because
get-
Brent was falling asleep. So typically he's my measurement of how it's going.
How glazed over.
Yeah, I'm like, uh-oh.
Yeah. All right.
Fast forward.
Yes. I mean, you probably still captivated the intellectual audience. It's just us who are dumbed down.
All the Platonists are either very angry or
I'm gonna get a lot of hate from Platonists.
Yeah.
They're gonna throw a lot of plates at me.
And when you said Platonist, I thought you meant Satanist, and you just kind of had a speech impediment, but I guess not after you explained it fully. So, all right. So this week, as we're getting into the sermon discussion, this week we launched a new series, and it's going to be some really heavy discussions over the next few weeks.
I know. We thought people were mad at us then. Here we go.
Yes. We're going to probably get a lot of feedback coming up. But it's the series is titled "What Do You Say When?" and it's about difficult conversations that you will most likely be encountered with.
Not
at least
most
one
likely,
of the
but
subjects.
You're gonna have them in your life or around you, yeah.
And so it's gonna run a plethora of different subject matters, and some of them are.
Would you say that we have a plethora of subject matters?
Yes, plethora. That means a lot. So again, we most of them are PG-13, so we could probably get into a little heavier discussions here than we can in the auditorium, since we still, even though we tell people, hey, you might want to keep your kids in the children's ministry, kids are there, so you do have to kind of watch it a little bit.
Yep.
But so we could probably get more into the nuts and bolts about things. But this one was just set up the whole series, and it was entitled Ground Rules for Conversation. So when you're going to have these difficult discussions or contentious discussions, I guess contentious wouldn't be a good one, but
no, I call them gut punch conversations. Yeah. Like it's the moment that somebody says something to you and just the wind is knocked out of you by their statement. Like you're just like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what to think. It's just, that's so heavy. It's life altering, sometimes very fear oriented. And so I think I like that term, a gut punch conversation, because this is really how they've felt in my life when they've come along. And a lot of people, they put you in a state of shock sometimes. Like you're going to fight, you're going to fly, you're going to flee or freeze or flee. So,
I will say too, like, part of this is just, how do you have those conversations and how your mindset should be and all this stuff. But, sometimes those conversations can catch you off guard. So you enter into them unprepared, and you kind of have three main points.
A little formula.
And we'll kind of hit each point and then discuss them. But with some of the verses, and the grounding of the whole sermon was on John chapter 8, verses 1 through 11. And so you brought up a couple of other proverbs. And one of them was, whoever restrains his words has knowledge, and he who has a cool spirit is a man of understanding. And then the other one was, when words are many, transgression is not lacking, but whoever restrains his lips is prudent. So part
this podcast is filled with sin.
We are neither prudent nor knowledgeable, which again, I feel like I realize that about myself too, because I have had conversations. I've entered into conversations thinking I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to listen. And then I just go off and say way too many words. And so like, just wanted to throw that out to you guys. When you've had these gut punch or these difficult conversations, whether it be with your kids or whether it be with somebody else, how difficult is it for you to restrain your words? And if it is, why do you find it difficult to restrain your words?
I don't know. I mean, it would depend on the person, right? It would depend on who I'm talking to. So if you're talking about family, and it would depend on the issue, right? So I don't know. You'd have to give me a scenario. What kind of a gut punch question will we be talking about?
Whatever you think in your mind.
Well, it's hard because sometimes we don't want to share other people's stories, right?
That's right.
That's kind of the difficult thing.
I mean, part of being in ministry is that you have to do a lot of these conversations with friends that you have to go to church with afterwards. And so that can be difficult because you don't really, I don't think some of us want to have conflict with people, but sometimes it's necessary. And, you have to say something that no one wants to say to the person because you care about them and you feel like you have to. And so
I would say, though, people that want conflict probably aren't concerned with having healthy conversations.
Well, I'll give you a gut punch conversation that's pretty kind of normal that I think a lot of people have ran into, and that is their kid or somebody comes up to them and says, "Dude, I dad," or I wrecked the car. Right. So I've had my kids. So far, I have 3 drivers. All 3 of them at some point have come up to me and said, I hit somebody or something like that.
Hit somebody. I left them on the 91 freeway. I got away clean, Dad.
Yep, right. That's that. So first of all,
here's the shovel. They need your help.
Clarification. I started Breaking Bad, Dad. It's like,
what is going on?
If you love me,
you'll dig it 6 feet down.
Yeah.
But it's like each one was a different event. Like one was like, I bumped into somebody's bumper in front of me, and they pulled over and they looked and they were like, "Yeah, you're good. Go on. I got a couple dents in my bumper." Another one was like, I hit somebody else and scraped their bumper. Another one was like, I crumpled the side of their car. And it's like, those are gut punches. And to be honest, in those cases, everything's flying through my head from like, oh my gosh, how much is this going to cost? They're going to be so mad. I want to run. I have the flee mentality in some cases, like the run away. And so they're like, I get home and Tressa's like, you need to go with them and go find out what happened. And I had to go over to the house, the car, and stand there and be just like, I got to stand in this and keep my mouth closed. A lot of times it was just letting my kids talk, let them take what they needed to take. But man, it was like, I didn't have a lot of words in those cases. It was pretty restrained. But
in those cases too, a lot of the consternation or fear or whatever is what the person's reaction is going to be. You don't know if the other person is like, well, I'm going to sue you for, or or if they'll be understanding, or
I've had somebody who was really ticked and like it didn't matter how much my son took responsibility and apologized. Man, this person just kept going and just like mouthing. I'm just like, hey, I had to like step up and be a little bit more, assertive, not mean, but yeah, it's hard because you do want to knee-jerk react. I'm not a big knee-jerk reactor. It takes me a little while. I'm like the slow boil exploder. I don't know about you. You've had some pretty gut punch conversations over the years.
Yes. I don't know. I feel like sometimes for me, the more serious the issue is, the more composed I am. Mm-hmm. And I mean, probably the biggest one in my life in that regard was when my youngest daughter came and let us know that she was pregnant and she wasn't married. So, I think she was 19, 20 years old. She was going to Christian Bible college and living on campus, and she was dating somebody, and they broke up, and about a month after they broke up, she came in at like midnight in her room and, Mom, come here. Nancy took off, and then Nancy came back in. She goes, I gotta take off with Corinne, and so I'll be back in a few. So I'm sitting there going, oh, she's going to get a pregnancy test. And I will say, we had no evidence of this. I mean, we mm-hmm. She was a pretty good kid and all that stuff. But I just had this feeling. So then they came back, and then Corinne came in the room and announced that she was pregnant. And I just remember at that point, my brain is screaming all of these things, and I just felt this kind of tap on my shoulder, just going, just shut up mm-hmm. and listen to her, and you can always have conversations later, but right now she just needs to know that you care about her, that you love her, and that she's safe. And so I just listened to her, and she was crying, and then I reached over and I just gave her a big kiss. I told her we loved her, and go ahead and go to bed. We'll discuss this later. So that was one of the triumphant moments of my life. But there's been so many conversations that maybe weren't that intense, and where I knew I had to have a conversation with my other daughter, who her and I are very much alike. And I know I would sit there and I would just okay, I'm just going to listen. I'm not going to say anything. I'm just
going to ask great questions.
I'm going to just ask a question and let it go on. And I'm not going to interject or interrupt or argue. And then next thing I know, we're both, and I'm just like, dang it, So I know on both ends, I have not been the most consistent.
So I think that the harder question here is like the framing is tough, right? Because I'm saying love them. And okay, in many cases, you give them their respect, you give them attention. And the harder one for me would be if I'm loving them and they're taking it flippantly. Like, I think that would be the hardest part. If this is a serious event, like maybe they were pregnant or maybe they went and they've, they're telling me that they don't believe in God anymore. And I'm so excited. And I'd be like, you're taking this way too like flippantly. Like, I would have a much harder time doing the love them first attitude than the let's talk about how serious this is. Like, this is a serious deal. Like, if there are some cases where in pregnancy, I think there are people who can play it up like, this is the greatest thing. I'm so excited. There are some people who are taking drugs and stuff and just try to be like, it's no big deal and I'm all fine, but I just want to let you know. It's that kind of stuff when it's flippant. I think I would have a little bit harder of a time when it's even confessed at church, because I have to go like, oh, hold on a minute. It's like, hey, I moved in with my boyfriend or girlfriend, right? That's one of those gut punch conversations parents can get. I think, I don't know how much it hits some people than others. As a Christian parent, I'd be like, oh, what? And I'd be like, whoa. I'd be like, oh, now I love you. I'd be real quick on the love part and be like, but we need to talk about the truth. And I do think that there are points in this formula that the love comes quick, and then you do need to move to the truth.
No, the truth is loving, though, to me.
Right. But I don't think in our current climate, I don't think you just go straight for the truth jugular. You affirm your love, you care about them, you say, listen, you're making a choice here. Now I do need to talk to you about it. And I think that sometimes that needs to be right on the heels of that love. Sometimes, like you said, you give a gap and you give yourself some time to kind of cool, meditate, really get your thoughts down. I don't know. So I know that in the world of truth, us three are probably a little bit more like, truth is the most important thing, right?
Well, I mean, I think of truth as the remedy to the thing. So for me, if someone's sitting there telling me like, hey, it's not that bad, you're trying to do this cognitive dissonance thing, I have to point that out. It wouldn't be loving or kind to just let you think of something false about the truth.
Right.
And so to me, if I could say, look, I can relate to how frustrated you are, I can relate to why you'd want to defend this position, but it's going to harm you in the end. And I care about you, so I have to tell you what you don't want to hear. And I don't want to, but I'm compelled by my love for you to tell you this.
But you get why I had to separate the two out, like, because I do believe there are people in
there
this
are people
world
that use the truth to express their anger.
Right, they're just bashing with truth. That's been the concept in the past.
They're hiding behind the truth to be angry at the person. Like, to me, it's like you have to be stern, and that's different than how dare you? You violate my blah blah blah. You're saying a bunch of truthful things, but they're not helpful. They're just harmful. So
it's like a counselor in rapport, right? You don't have a counselor who's just going to go straight at you with all of their their evidence and their stuff that they know that you need to do. No, you have to build rapport to show them that you care, so they can trust the information that you have. And that's why you get counselors with their PhDs on the wall, because they're trying to show you that you can listen to me. I've got good advice for you. And the danger is that if you put the truth in front of the love, you haven't built a delivery system for the love. It's like the doctor who tells you need to do this chemo stuff, but they haven't built any over the years. They've messed up multiple times on your prescriptions, and they don't really care about you. It's going to be really hard for you to go like, I don't really want to listen to you about your what you're telling me the cure is, because I don't believe you.
Yeah,
like that. That's why I think you start with that love, call it the rapport, the love. Then the truth has to be there. Many people don't move on to the truth, though, don't you think?
Well, in our current culture, the idea is that I'm trying to take a bad situation and make it a good situation. So there's a lot of, I find that to be self-deception. Like, well, no, children are good; they're a blessing, And you're like, yes, but this circumstance isn't favorable, and you need to make sure you've worked through those issues. How did it happen? What happened? What caused the relationship to, and you have to go through all of these steps to work out these problems, because you can repeat them real easily. And so I do think as a therapist, this is why it depends on what part of the conversation you're in. So usually if you're hitting someone with more truth, you have a long lasting relationship that you've already built a rapport with their family or their friends. And so sometimes they'll avoid it because they see it coming.
So I think that's a critical thing to say. Like one of the reasons I think that we've had some of our conversations and been able to move quickly to the truth is because we've built deeper relationships. And I think if there's a word of advice to parents and friends out there, that I would say that that this conversation will go poorly depending on how well you've built your relationship prior. Like dads, if you're just like saying hi to your kids and going off to work and come home and you do not know your child, you're getting one word answers, you're getting that's not going to go well no matter what.
You're not engaged.
Yeah.
Well, also just a lot of times people have kids and they think of them as an extension of their own toys or something, almost like a prodigy. Like I have them because I have a job. They're like places that you check off on a checklist. But there are people.
I don't think they start that way. I think it
just,
can get to that
point.
point.
It gets to that point when you just let life lead you. Like you're just, I have to work. I have to go home. I have to sleep. I have to work. And you get caught in the cycle and you forget that everything around you, if you have loving kids, if you have a loving wife or you have good relationships, that those take effort and then you have to invest in those and you have to think of them as a blessing. And sometimes you can take them for granted. You can just be like, well, I'm busy. And then 10 years go by and you don't have the rapport that you need in order to establish a relationship. I see this just with fathers and daughters and mothers and daughters and sons, and how because they're not able to have this conversation because they've let life take them where they wanted to go. And now all of a sudden they want to fix all that in the short period of time because the emergency hit. So they're going to come back to church, which is all good because I think we're set up to take care of people when they're hurting, whatever their circumstances. But you can see that some of this leads to just, I don't need to go to church. I want to go do what I want to do. I'm too busy. I'm too tired. And then you need a community and then they're not there. And it's like really hard to fix that problem in the emergency if you haven't built those things up. So I'm just trying to encourage people to say that, like, you might think it's monotonous and mundane to just spend time with your kids or spend time or you're too tired. But I don't think it takes as much effort as it is if you just be present. You know, if you're like tired, be tired with your kids. You know, play with them while they're sitting on your lap watching TV. Just keep connecting with them in the best way you know how. Because when that happens, when there's something on the other end, they're like, Dad, Mom, I gotta talk to you about something. You're like, oh, okay. That you know that you kind of know enough about them and what they're into and where they're at, that you can be there to help them.
I think I'm going to go here because I know this is kind of weird, but I think one of the biggest, most helpful things that you can do, even for the background of this kind of stuff, like I think a lot of people go like, well, my kid, you call it mundane. I've never found talking to my kids mundane. My kids are, but at the same time, no, because I like little kid stuff. I enjoy I try to understand what they're into and enjoy those things. I think one of the things I want to advise people in general, single, married, be interesting. Like somewhere along the line on the adult path, somehow we thought we've got to only do what the pop culture is interested in or whatever. Or you've got to be only into like, you got to drop your childhood interests, or you can't explore a new thought or a new creative way, or you can't listen to a different perspective than because it freaks you out or something. I don't know if that's a personality thing, if that's because I'm more open to new experiences, but I find that when you are when you are interested in a lot of things, people are interesting. And when people are interesting, your children are interesting, and it's easier to cultivate a relationship with them. Now, that may be that your interests are sports, and man, it's fun. I mean, we're going to be doing your father's funeral here coming up, and just getting to talk to your brother-in-law, Greg, and just his conversations about how he just loved watching the Rams with him, because it was it was just like, oh, we watched it together, and then your mom's winning all the silly pools and stuff, and they don't know why, because she likes the colors. Yeah. But it's like, but this is like that I'm not a big football guy. They were like, who's your football team? I'm like, I don't really have one, but they were interesting to me because I was interested in what they were interested in, and so if you find that in your children. I don't find it mundane. And I think you have to cultivate the art of trying to find what's interesting in people and find what's interesting in our world. God gave you all of these receptors for joy and pleasure and to be curious and interested. And somewhere, I don't know if it's school or it's just what, it shuts it down. And
I just think that a lot of times when I see people, they're too adult. I don't know how else to put it. It's like everything is
boring. I'm sorry. If you're not, none of our audience is boring. You wouldn't listen to this if you were. I'm just going to tell you right now, cut above the rest.
Or you wouldn't listen to the first 4 minutes if you were bored.
Yeah, like one of the just a couple of hints that over the years with counseling is when you go home and you see your kid, smile at them. I know that sounds really dumb, but if they associate the door and opening in your face with happiness, then that when the first 5 years of their development, they're excited now to see you. If they come in and you bring all that frustration from work through the front door, then their first reaction to you is to fear you. It's to step away and go, I have to like give him his space because he's not approachable. And that develops over time. And as an adult, they just stop caring. They stop coming to the door. And so I tell people, like, it's a sacrifice to be a father typically because you've got to put aside your work when you walk in the door and think about the people that are there. And that's really hard to do with whatever's going on at work.
It gets back to the same thing of love, right? So I'll give you just a simple example. I'm not trying to toot my horn. I'm just saying that you practice this long enough, you can do, I'll go whatever. Thank you. It works. I did youth last Wednesday and got to teach at it. And 2 junior high kids I've never met in my life had to walk down. Well, we ain't going to let them walk down to the property on their own. So I'm walking with these 2 guys. I don't know them at all. And I'm like, well, what do I know? I know they're in junior high. I'm like, so what junior high do you go to? One kid's like, I go to the school here. I'm like, oh yeah. You were in the room. You asked your question. I didn't associate all that. I was like, oh, so what are you guys interested in? What do you guys do? Is one's like, oh, I skate. I'm like, oh, sweet. Like, like trick skating, like 180 ollies. What do you like into? He's like, oh, I'm getting there, but I really like to ride my like longboard. So
what you're telling me is you're from Corona.
And so no, that's just not how kids are anymore.
No, I know, but when we were young,
and so both these guys were into. I'm like, so do you like particular trucks? Like what's your? And he's like, oh man, and he started getting all lit up, excited about his trucks, and I'm like, okay, I don't know a ton about trucks, but let me know which ones you like and what. But it was here I'm having probably a longer conversation with this kid than other adults have because I'm just trying to be interested in what they're interested in. And they teach me. Guess what? I learned something from them. I enjoy, oh, you're skating over here. You're not over there. Oh, you go to these. I'm learning things. And that builds that open door for when the time comes that they have to tell you something hard.
Well, the number one complaint in counseling with children is that their parents look at their phone and not their face. So the complaints, we always think it's the other way around. Parents are complaining about their kids always being on the tablet. But actually, the reports are also the opposite, that parents are no longer looking and engaging their kids together. Even if you're looking at a tablet, they're not looking at it together, right? So the lack of people seeing each other's faces has made people less be able to express what they're feeling in a family sometimes. So it's kind of ruined some family dynamics. It's sad when I go to watch people eat and you have to give kids 3 tablets for them to finish the meal. And they're of various ages, right? So we're not talking maybe the young age. And I find that you used to have to like learn how to correct your kids or what you do in public
and get them to talk,
get them interested in the conversation. And you can't just be like adult, everyone else. And so you have to engage, and that takes practice. It's not something that's natural to bring a kid into a conversation.
You're talking Brent's era where children were seen and not heard.
Well, there's still some of that, but even now
that's scriptural.
I just watch people walk their kids in the mall while they're scrolling, and the kids like straggling along behind. I was like, are you going to the mall together, or are you having your time on your tablet or whatever, or your phone? And I know it's a struggle, but I think putting the phone down and looking at someone's face is not something that we do anymore. And when these conversations come up, when we need to talk face to face, a lot of kids don't know, is that an angry face that dad's making? Or is that I can approach him, or I don't even know. And you're getting older and older and pushing that back farther and farther. But I think you have to build slow. And I think you can start wherever you're at.
But again,
I know that I know that we've said this before, and you kind of, alluded to it a bit, but in order to really have successful conversations with your kids about gut punch, things that come up in life, like one of the things I always say is, it's easier to be in a supportive community when you're going through a crisis than it is to try to find a supportive community when a crisis hits, right? So, if you're living your life in this community and crisis hits, it's much easier. And again, it's the same thing with conversations with your kid. If you are totally engaged in having conversations and deep conversations, and then when these things come up, it's not that aspect of like, okay, what do I do now? You're already practiced, and everybody is comfortable with the fact that you've had these hard conversations ongoing. And so this isn't completely foreign to them, and the emotional reactions aren't going to be completely foreign to you. And so I think practicing those things, that when those situations come up, it makes it much more natural and easy as well.
And this goes back to our old First In series where we were talking about that you be the one as the parents to bring up the issue. You be the one who brings up the tough conversations before they have to bring them up to you. And very often, if you're willing to do that, those tough conversations these gut punch conversations are avoided because they feel comfortable before they've ever gotten to sleeping with their boyfriend or their girlfriend, before they would ever consider an abortion, before they would ever, before they'd ever consider suicide. You've already been talking about, hey, have we ever talked about suicide? Have we ever talked about, God, and why do you really believe this or not? Like that's the warp and woof of
life,
of home life.
You could be watching a movie and it comes up and you're like, oh, what do you think of that?
Yeah, exactly.
Just
steal the moments. Steal the moments and use them.
But you're talking about in the sermon something about just the ability to listen and try to withhold that response. One of the things that's really easier for people who counsel children that it's really hard for parents is not to slip into parent mode before you have the information. So you watched an event occur. They stole cookies or something when they're young. You know everything that happened. So the first thing is, we don't steal cookies, blah, 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 blah. We put the cookies away. You get in trouble. Case closed, right? The problem is you don't know what led to the thinking that said it was okay to take something that wasn't theirs when they were told not to. So the therapist asks lots more questions. They'll say like, oh, you had a cookie. Oh, were you hungry? And you're trying to build to they feel comfortable sharing what their thoughts were that led up to where they got to. And that's really hard for a parent because you want to fix that problem.
You want to fix the behavior.
Yeah. Right? And you're trying to correct the behavior before you understand what caused it. And with the therapist, the reason why they're not a parent, so they can kind of slip into that role if they get the ability to do so, if you build the rapport. And so it's a little bit easier to find out, like, well, I just didn't like the guy, so I punched him in the face. Where before I found out it was an accident. I hit the guy because, my elbow flew and, I was just waving my hands around. Now I hear the whole story, and it's different from what the parent got because they're afraid. The fear is that you want to please your parent in some way, or at least defend yourself from them.
You just made me cringe though, because you were like, why did you take that cookie when you were told not to? Were you hungry? That reminds me of like when we were raising our kids, and Nancy would kind of ask those questions. I'm like, don't give them the answer. Don't give them a cop out answer. Oh yeah, that's why I did it. I was hungry. No, let them answer it.
There's a little bit of tact to doing that. Yeah.
Ask the question. Don't give them an answer that they could cop out on. But again, I think part of the thing, and one of the points you were talking about was just loving people through it as well. And I think one of the situations that I think makes these conversations difficult, and maybe we get heightened emotionally and speak a little harsher than we want to, or get judgy or preachy.
We just want to fix behavior.
But
for safety reasons,
I think that comes
usually
out of fear.
Yeah.
Right. Because we're afraid, oh my gosh, you're pregnant. And then all of a sudden we're fear, oh my gosh, this is going to ruin your life. You're going to have to drop out of college. It's going to, blah, blah, blah. Or, I'm gay. And it's like, oh my gosh, you're going to lose your salvation. And rah, rah, rah. And we just work out of fear. And our reaction is trying to control the situation and control
contain
them,
it.
And try to convince them out of it. And so again, it's just a reminder that fear is not love, and oftentimes fear forces us to try to take control over something that we don't have control over, which causes frustration, and that control is not love. I
came on this verse that's coming into the sermon this week, but it is for me a very powerful verse. It's Proverbs chapter 24, 34 of, basically it says the fear of man is a snare. What I like about that, but trust in the Lord is will make you safe. What I've found interesting about the text is that 29:25, sorry. The fear of man lays a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord is safe. And we'll dive into this, but fear of, man in the sense of like, I'm gonna lose my reputation with them, or fear of man, like I'm not gonna get I'm never gonna get to go to college and get that job, or fear of man. There's all these fears that we create, and they're all gosh, you wrecked the car. And in my fear, I freak out like we're going to owe all kinds of money. And what's that going to make me? It's going to make me angry. It's going to make me controlling. It's going to make me not parent correctly to where I'm like, you need to go call them. When I stay calm and I trust that, the Lord's got this. He's got a lesson here for them. He'll provide for us. He knows what we need. When I trust the Lord, there's a safety that is created, this text is indicating. And that safety opens the way to life. That when I fear the Lord, that's with the beginning of wisdom. But when I fear men, it's so easy but I create all kinds of traps for myself. I create control over people, which never works, right? You can't really control.
And you're creating control when you're doing more of the talking and less of the listening.
Yeah.
In those situations.
Or giving them the answers you want to hear.
Yeah.
Cookies are good.
There's the idea of just like opening the door to let's just deal with the problem. Let's just erase the issue. Let's just walk away. I think that a lot of what our culture is getting into in this affirmation therapy, which
it's a worldview therapy where you affirm whatever the person believes is real or true, even if it isn't.
It is a way is mitigating fear. I really think that
or justifying actions, right? Because it makes people feel good. And if you're trying to make people feel good, and that's what you're getting paid to do.
Well, I'm fearful that I'm not going to have people come back. So I'm just going to, it's a really bad feedback system in counseling.
Yes. Yes.
Because if people really like hearing me affirm them, they're going to come back to me. Well, now I'm going to get paid more. I'm going to get better reviews. That's a problem. That's a trap. That's not good for anybody. It's the fear. And what are they fearing? They're fearing if I tell them the truth, they're not going to come back to me. If I tell them the truth, if they don't like me, that's just not good counseling. When we just do an only affirmation,
or you fear society, right?
It's a tool.
You can also fear society. I mean, now we're threatening therapists that if you say things that are true, that you can lose your license. Right. So it is a real fear. And it's very easy. What it is like it's emotional hijacking when you put someone in a state where it overrides their ability to think reasonably because of their emotional state. It's easier to deceive them. Like con men do this to people. They get you to be overly relaxed or overly confident or push your emotions past the point at which you're willing to comprehend and think straight about, well, this is, if we took 3 seconds and then like, let me think about what would God want me to do here. What's good about the faith is it gives you an objective reasoning tool, even when your emotions are not regulated.
And this is my point. I think we talked about this the other night, was the idea that when you fall into fear, you can be emotionally, you just said it, you can be emotionally hijacked, right? There's an enemy, spiritual enemy that wants to kill, steal, and destroy. He will take that moment of hijack for the worst case scenario. And what's interesting is as we deal with all of these different issues, fear is always the one that like slides in there that becomes the primary problem. Fear, it is a liar.
Well, it could be. So the reason I say that is because when fear comes in, the question becomes, what do I fear greater? like you have a bunch of relationships, and you have like your child in front of you. You have friends and family. You have society pressures. You have legal situations that occur. All these are pressing in on you. The question is, when something presses in on you, what is the thing that you most fear losing in your relationship? And if it's not God, then you will try to make a compromise to keep something if it's greater than God. I hate the dirty little secret to family relationships is you actually do have to love God more than your own family. And nobody wants to profess that, but there are going to be times when you're tested by the decisions that your family makes that don't honor God, with your ability to stay loyal to God and maintain your relationship and tell this person in a loving way what God would have them do, because you care about them and God cares about them. You legitimately have to fear God more than you fear man. And
can you give an example of what you're saying?
So, if someone comes up to me and says, I'm trying, the reason why I'm not talking too many examples is just because I have a lot of friends and family that are in situations, but
change their names.
Yeah. So people come up and they say, I had a illicit relationship or an affair or something like that, and I don't want to lose this family member. I've had family members who, they know I work at a church, and all of a sudden they feel guilty or whatever. And so how do I talk to that person without saying, like, it's okay what you're doing in your life. It's okay that you're harming yourself, doing all this, whatever you're doing, drinking, or because I want to maintain the relationship. I don't want to lose the ability to continue to communicate with you. Well, the truth is there's going to come a time where that relationship, I'm starting to maintain it, that conversation is going to have to come up if I love them. If I'm around them frequently enough, if they're there, we're interacting, I have to be who God said I would be. If I have to accept that I have to love them, not necessarily accept what they're doing, they also have to love me and hear things that they don't want to hear as well. That's how honest relationships work. If there's something I can say to you that is truthful that would break our friendship, then unfortunately that needs to happen, because that's what's going to cause you to grow. And God often uses people and relationships to make us grow or to compromise our faith. I just see it time and time again with the LGBTQ issue, because you watch a kid struggle with their identity. You watch all the harm. Maybe some people are making fun of them. They lose their friends, even if they're going to church or whatever. And you're like, you know what? I want to be around a relationship that makes my kid feel happy. I want to see them smile again. And it's easier to just be like, I'm just going to accept this and I'm going to find a way to fit God in and this reality at the same time, and just kind of go to the pastors that will tell me what I want to hear, because I love this family member so much. And really, isn't it all about love? And it's just about caring for people. Jesus cared about people. He never rejected people. So you start seeing that compromise happen in a family. You see it usually happens with the thing that you hold in high esteem. We see it a lot in counseling. So two people, they get divorced, and then one guy comes to church, I want to get my life right. And the question is, do you want to get your life right because you love God, or do you want your wife back?
Yeah, exactly.
So because they're like...
We encounter that all the time.
All the time. And it's just like, look, I can tell you one thing. If you love God, no matter what happens, you will find meaning in life. You will have better relationships. You will have the best relationship you can have, even with that person, if they're open to it. But if you go for God because you want something, then that's a different God. I don't know what that's going to get you, but you think of God as a vending
And again,
machine.
I'm gracious. Nobody really goes for God for the perfect reason every single time at the beginning. But I
would say in what the situation you're describing, and I've ran into that situation numerous times, I really don't believe that they believe that they're pursuing God to get their spouse back. I think they think they're being genuine. And I think the only way you know that they weren't
is to walk through it with
when they didn't get their spouse back. Did they maintain moving forward in their relationship with God, or did they abandon God at that point?
When I'm willing to, and at that point, the question about love is they may not know, and you have to walk through it with them for them to discover what they love. Right. If God is willing to struggle through, if you tell me something, I'm going to go on that. Until the facts told me that's not true. You know what I mean? And I'll say, like, that's a mercy. You should be very thankful. So now that you have your wife back, are you still going to church? You still love Jesus? I'm going to call you and be like, hey, let's go to group. But, that kind of thing, because that's what you said, right? You said that you loved the Lord. And I'm more like that with people that are Christian because you're closer to our community. I'm not going to be like that with somebody who never professes God in the first place, right? that would be a whole different conversation. But I do think that if you care about someone, and this is what I think the military helps with, because you have people that really don't care about you all that much, but they care about something greater than just, telling you the truth about what you're doing, because you might die in a battlefield. So they tell you things you don't want to hear about yourself. Nobody wants to hear that you stink at something, right? Or that you're not good at something. But the thing is they stick through it with you to get you to the point where you're going to get there. And I do feel like, even though the church has had a bad name historically, we're pretty good, I think, at some of these issues, especially when it comes to like abortion clinic support. The church has come around people who want to give up for adoptions. Everybody has always said, the church never cares about anything but the abortions. That's not true. And so we do put our money where our mouth is. And we are willing to love people. And I've seen that in our church where someone has fallen short. We all fall short. And I don't see a lot of judgment. I see a lot of people being baby clothes, and I see people loving people, but making sure they're connected to the body of Christ and supporting them and wanting them to stay in community.
And that's where the other part comes in, though. So this is why I pulled out the James passage, James chapter 3, where we're talking about the delivery system of truth. And because I do think we have a problem, but a lot of people don't know how to deliver the truth well. I think they have a tendency to either hem and haw around the truth, mitigating things. This is my struggle, and that's where we were, not from the pulpit, but in interpersonal conversations. I'm a people pleaser, so I really wrestle with things. But I also know some people who are just, they don't care, and they just say it, and you're just like, dude, that ain't gonna be received. You just like blew them out of the water, and they don't care. They don't care what you know until they know that you care, kind of thing.
Well, it's also an intent to harm oftentimes.
So what we have here is, he says, but the wisdom from above. So he's talking about who amongst you are wise. And he's like, if you have bitter jealousy, selfish ambition in your hearts, don't boast and be false to the truth. This is not wisdom that comes down from above, but is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. For where there's jealousy and selfish ambition exists, there will be disorder and every vile practice going on. But wisdom from above is first pure, meaning pure in heart, pure in motive, desiring the best for the person. It's loving, it's peaceable. So it's seeking
reconciliation,
seeking peace, seeking to bring about all things in the right place. Gentle, meaning controlled over their emotions. Open to reason. And this is the part that I could have harped on a little longer, but it's like, we need some reasonable Christians back. We need to be able to make the arguments well on both sides of the table. We need to understand some of what we're doing. So jokingly, my Greg's philosophy minute, whatever. But then full of mercy and good fruits. They're bound together so that you're giving mercy, which is an attribute of God, and his compassion, but it's in a way that it's actually locked in with love. And then the last one, impartial and sincere. That's the one I think so many of us struggle with in this climate, because you get bashed for laying out your bias, laying out your to be impartial, or is this idea of being without intent
not
to
having a position.
It's not. It's different. It says it's without the intent of trying to divide. You're trying not to be judgmental on the other person's position. Right. Impartial is not necessarily like, I just don't believe anything, so we're all gonna
willing to hear the person out.
I'm willing to hear you out. I'm not gonna judge during it. I'm not gonna divide us here, but I'm going to listen to you. And here sincerely is my position. So what we're trying to do is say, this is my genuine position. I'm not lying to you, and I'm willing to hear what you're saying. You're not lying to me. All the cards are on the table. That's how we say it today. It's like everything's revealed. And I don't think people are comfortable putting all their cards on the table. We want to
somebody has to hide their cards.
Yeah, we got to,
in order for us to get along.
We got to manipulate, and we got to play the cards appropriately, because I want to win the argument. And the point here, again, it's not about winning the argument. It's about peace. It's about an exchange so that you give truth. And I didn't really get deep into this, but I use the word give truth on purpose, not tell the truth, because I want you to give it to them. I want them to walk away and
receive it,
and it be in their shoe, bugging them, as Craig Kokel will put.
But the truth is what's bugging them, not the way you deliver it.
Right. You've loved them already. Now you give them the truth. They gotta walk away going like, oh, this really is I got to really think about this.
And the idea you said, and I know it gets to be a little trite cliche at times, but I use it all the time anyway, is that idea that people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And one of the ways that you can demonstrate that you care for somebody and that you love them as a person, and not just an argument to win, is by listening to them. You know, again, you should be doing way more listening than you're doing talking, especially with the initial conversations. You know,
Is this like a coded message to me and Steven?
no, I'm just kidding. but that is what's going to communicate to them that you are interested in them as a person.
Huh? I wasn't listening to what you were saying.
Huh?
I was kidding.
Yeah, exactly. And there's this thing that we used to talk about in premarital counseling, and I think this is a great reminder, is that listening is more than just hearing. You know, hearing is just getting information, but listening is a deliberate act of love, and it's choosing to journey with someone through their words at their pace. It means you're resisting the urge to interrupt, to jump ahead to conclusions, but instead patiently walking with them as they express their heart.
Okay, so I want to ask a question about that. So when you're saying you're not interrupting or jumping ahead, if say you're talking to somebody who just keeps going, and you're like, man,
Filibustering?
Filibustering. Like, is that interrupting, or is like, how do you listen to someone who won't stop talking?
Well, I think part of that is understanding who you're talking to as well, right? I mean, are they a verbal processor? So then you have to be more patient with a verbal processor than you do with someone who may be filibustering. You know, it's kind of like when we talk about evangelism and people are throwing out questions, you know, kind of having that discernment of, are they throwing out these questions as roadblocks to stop the conversation, or are these genuine concerns and questions that they want answers to, you know? And so I think if they're filibustering and just, I don't want to get to the point, I don't want to let you speak, so I'm just going to keep going, then, you know, I mean, I don't know what the loving thing would be doing, but I would probably go, okay, and stop them.
I have a tip. I know that I have a hard time tracking with longer responses. So, like, I literally, if Teresa's like, hey, we need to talk. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is going to be serious. I do better when I actually sit down and I have something I'm writing. I'm taking notes. It keeps me tracking.
Right. It does me too. I have to take notes, and it keeps me. I've learned when I'm doing in my office and talking to couples or whatever, that is what saves me is a notepad, because you want to interrupt because this question came up or what, you know, so you just write it down so that you can patiently listen to them and then come back to that question later without shutting it down or interrupting them.
That's a good therapeutic technique.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You asked, and then you can judge them at the end when you got all these notes.
You write it all down.
See, this is who you.
They're doing it. One, they're either avoiding the actual conversation by filibustering. That's usually what people are trying to do. They're trying to block getting to the truth. And at some point, you would have to jump in and go, hey, just for a second, it feels like we're not talking about the subject anymore, and you're going on and on. I don't feel like I can respond. I feel like you're just emoting, and I don't have any say in this conversation. So you have to ask, is this a conversation? The other one is if they're verbal processing, sometimes it's good to ask, are you just verbally processing? Because a lot of people want to fix problems that, you just want to express them, and you haven't heard them yet because you need to get them out. And so that's a different kind of talking too much.
Like your kids or somebody really close to you that gives you this gut punch conversation, you kind of know their character and whether they're a verbal processor or it's not.
But then there are people, because this is just for people who, if you may not know someone so well, there are people who have scatological thinking. They may have a cognitive problem or
scatological. Is that another poop?
Well, it's like it just goes all over the place.
Diarrhea of the mouth. Yeah.
So you're trying to look for a pattern typically in someone's conversation, and typically if they keep talking, they'll loop around to the pattern over and over, and you say, okay, stop. Let me re-say what I think I hear you saying. You tell me yes or no, and then kind of get all the details and go, okay, you don't. I heard.
You don't need to go back over this.
You don't
again.
need to go this again. We've gone through this a couple of times. Calm down. Let's talk further on. And you may have to set the pace because some people are in crisis. Some people are in trauma. They can't communicate well. And that's what I meant by you start going, and then the car, and then the lights were there, and then I hit this thing, and then you're going to hate me. And you're like, well, I don't even know what we're talking about. So calm down. Let's slow the circle down. And you want to do it too, especially if it's an accident. Like if you have somebody who's like cut themselves or done, because I've been in some weird situations where people have done some weird things. You have to be the calm one that kind of finds out. You have to triage what needs to happen right now to worry about their safety, and then get to a peaceful conversation, and then help them get out of the traumatic situation, because the fear will override your ability to reason, and you can cause more harm. And so if you're gonna play the role of someone who's gonna be faithful to help, you have to put yourself in that term, and before you can get to the honest conversation. Sometimes it happens because you talk about car accidents. If you're the one that they're calling on the phone, I've gotten a few of those phone calls. I just got hit, and I don't know if I'm driving to the scene of someone dying or what's going on, and it's easy to just freak out. And I've seen people like drive down there faster, and it's like, whoa, don't add to the trauma. Someone has to be the voice of reason. And later you can vent.
And
later
and let me just tell you, there are moments in your life where you need to not be so calm. Like when you lose your 3-year-old son at Legoland.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm just patiently walking around looking in all the spots. My wife comes up like, what do you mean you lost Jonathan? Like, she's like, you need to go get what, you haven't told
There's
the
a sense
security
of
guard
urgency
yet? Or
that's required.
Like, oh, you're right. I need to kick this into gear. I learned after that to kick it into gear a little better, and when it's
a little faster.
I was a little proud of myself that I wasn't freaking out.
Yeah.
There's a difference between calm and freezing.
And
You got to do something.
So
I was looking everywhere. I just thought I'd find him really quick.
As we kind of sum up the ground rules for conversation, we love them. We try to communicate that we care for them and demonstrate that we care for them. We speak the truth in love, in kindness, and in compassion.
We give the truth.
We give the truth.
That's the formula.
And then finally, we stay close to them. And I think that is, and I got a question after I say this, but stay close to them, because I do feel like, staying close, even if you need some distance, from them, keep the relationship close. And again, with Corinne at that time, she started down a path that was a rebellious path. It went against our values. And one of the things, I had a conversation with her, and I'm free to share this because, she's shared it, I've shared it, and she gives me permission, but was, she was living in her house when she had Tucker, and she started going down a more rebellious path. And I told her, I said, you need to respect the values of our house, and if not, you're going to have to move out. I still want a relationship with you, but if I'm seeing all of this every day, it is going to ruin our relationship. I still want to love you. I still want to care for you. But I need some visual distance from the path that you're on. And I continued with conversations with her about following the Lord and everything else. But that distance can help keep the relationship healthy and close. And so do what is healthy to maintain the relationship, but don't lose the relationship. That's what we mean by stay close, because in some instances, you're the only holiness, I know that
You're the ambassador. Well, you're an ambassador.
Yeah, you're the only representation in their life at that point, and you don't want to cut that thread and completely leave them, and I see this in parents when their kids come out, as gay or whatever, and they, I'm a Christian, I can't have you in my life anymore. And it's like, but part of that relationship is, and I know there's complexities to that, but there's also that aspect of, if they decide to repent from this, you want to be the one that they turn to for care and understanding, and to walk with them through that as well. So what do you guys say about that? I forgot what my question was.
I think you got it right.
Yeah,
I think
that's cool.
I think there's just this, don't stop pursuing.
Yeah.
They may slam the door on you, but you never shut the door on them. You can keep yourself distanced with safety, but that doesn't mean you don't continue to give opportunity to open up the gates when it's healthy, or have an appropriate level relationship.
I think it's good to just pray, and
Pray.
invite the Spirit to help you with your emotions. Just start freaking around like there's a fire and everybody's hair's on fire.
And I will say, if I have been judged through my life on decisions I've made in a moment,
Yeah.
Rather than, people allowing me to grow and change, there'd probably be a lot of relationships in my life that were burned, and so
Well,
the story's not finished.
I was thinking about that. I love the fact that the Bible likes to use this concept of the heart of that was written, the stone heart versus the flesh heart. And when you think about a stone heart, you don't change. It's an unchanging heart. It's something that's solid, hard, and doesn't shift, doesn't adjust. And what I love about Christ is he's given all of us who follow him hearts that can change and grow. And that's why he gives us the mercy. And so I appreciate that. I think I wouldn't be the man I am. I wouldn't have the family I have. Wouldn't be the friend that I am, which could improve, but all that kind of stuff. But I wouldn't be where I'm at if Christ hadn't changed my life in the first place. And I don't think that this is easy. But I do think that if Christ is in your life, he empowers you to be able to do the things that you never thought you'd be able to do in these kind of conversations.
That's beautiful because he didn't just empower us. He actually, you preached right out of the Bible. You see Jesus doing this with people in their lives. Even though they're sinning, he's not saying, oh, go ahead and keep doing it like you mentioned in the sermon. He's loving them and telling them the truth. So he models the example. And I just find that so much more relatable than if it was just a Platonic philosophy.
Exactly. Well, we hope that you guys have enjoyed our conversations that have ranged from philosophy all the way to counseling, care, and your family life. If you've got some questions for us, let us know. You can send us your thoughts on the YouTube channel, or you can drop us an email, and you can email us at our email, rabbittrail@obcc.church. That's rabbittrail@obcc.church. And we would love to answer your question, get back to you guys. But we hope that you have a great rest of your week, and may the Lord bless you, and see you soon.
Bye.